we don't have a good track record of revealing the truth in a timely manner. As you know better than anybody, the president on January 23rd issued an executive order ordering the full declassification of files related to the murder of your uncle, father, and Martin Luther King. And, we haven't seen all of them yet. Where is that process? Have your conclusions about any or all of those three murders changed on the basis of new documents?
No, nothing's changed. I mean, as you know, there's already millions of pages of documents out there. And
yes.
I think, in terms of my uncle's death, I think that, that ship has sailed. I don't think anybody who actually is willing to read the evidence now will question the fact that my uncle was killed by a conspiracy. And that, in fact, Congress in 1973, when the Church Committee looked at it, I think it was 73.
75, yeah.
What? 75.
Yep.
Church Committee, they said it was conspiracy. That was the conclusion of the Congressional Committee. So the Warren Committee that was run by Alan Dulles, who was, had a lot of reasons to lie and did lie throughout. And in fact, he said at one of the sessions, if we were involved in this, we would lie. Oh, he said that. And he got himself put on that committee, and he was really, it should have been called the Dulles Commission, or, he said it's a single shooter. But then, in 75, that was 64, so 11 years later, Congress investigated, and they had a much larger purview. They had much more data at that time. And they said it was a conspiracy. But since then, there's been a million documents released, and probably 30 people who were involved have made confessions, including many of the prime actors. And so I don't think there's any doubt that my uncle was killed by a conspiracy. My father is more difficult because we just don't have the data. It's never been investigated. And, I've been trying to get it investigated. One of the women who played potentially a key role in it was a woman called, one woman in the polka dot dress who appeared to be Sirhan's handler. And that woman is living openly in Tarzana, California. Nobody's ever talked to her. And she, this should be investigated, and people should talk to her and, really investigate the crime. And as you know, and I think I've talked to you about this before, that my father, Sirhan was there. There were 77 eyewitnesses in the kitchen at the time, and he took 2 shots of my father. One of those shots hit Paul Schrade in the head, and Paul Schrade survived. And the other one hit the door jamb behind my father, and it was later removed by the LAPD. And then Sirhan was grabbed by 6 people, including Rayford Johnson, Rosie Greer, Carl Ulrich, who was the manager of the Ambassador Hotel. And they turned his gun, they bent him over the steam table, and they turned his gun away from my father. But it had 6 more shots in it. And he emptied the chamber. So Sirhan, or Rayford told me that Sirhan had superhuman strength. Sirhan is a little tiny guy. And I've met him and talked to him, but he's kind of a frail. I mean, he's frail now because he's older, but even then he was just a little tiny guy, and was not particularly strong. And Rayford said he had superhuman strength and he could not pry the gun from his hand, and he fired 6 more shots. All those shots hit people. We know what happened to every shot in his gun. And my father was shot by 4 shots from behind. One of them passed harmlessly through the shoulder pad of his. This is what Noguchi's autopsy said. through the shoulder pad of his suit. And all the others were contact shots, meaning the barrel of the gun was either touching his body or less than 3 inches from his body. The last shot that killed him was behind his left ear. And that shot, Noguchi says, was from 1 to 3 inches from him. And Sirhan was never behind him. Sirhan was always in front of him. And a guy who almost certainly took those shots was a security guard who had just gotten his job within a week before. And my father fell down on him. My father must have known that he was being shot because the last thing he did was he turned and he tore off the clip-on tie from Cesar. Cesar had him by the left hand and had steered him into the ambush. And he had his gun in his right hand, and he admitted it. He was seen, my father fell on him, and he pushed my father off him, and he had his gun drawn. And the gun was not taken away from him by the LAPD, which did a terrible job, and, not only a terrible, but a malevolent job, because they destroyed 2,500 photographs that were taken that night before the trial. So there were photographs, 2,500 photographs in that kitchen and the ballroom. And the LAPD collected them and destroyed them all. And you have to ask, why would they do that? And a lot of the other evidence was also destroyed, including the door jams. And, we have pictures of them. But we don't have the real thing. And then they never confiscated the gun from Cesar. And Cesar said that, I had the gun out because I was going to shoot at Sirhan. And so, that should be questioned.
Are there any documents?
And I'll just say this, that
yes.
Thane Cesar was working at that time. His job was working for the Lockheed plant in Los Angeles. And he had a top security classification at that. And Lisa Pease, who's one of the researchers and authors who's written extensively about this, went through his background. And the only employer that he ever listed officially in his background was the CIA. So there are a lot of questions, and we don't know the answers to them. I was in contact with Cesar in 2019, 2020, negotiating with him. He had moved to the Philippines, and I was trying to see if he would talk to me. I was going to go over there and talk to him, and he said, I'll do it for $5,000. And then when I got close, he said $10,000. And he said 20,000, then he said 30,000. And, and then he just said, no, I'm not going to meet with you. He's since passed away. So, again, we don't know, but there are enough kind of flags on it that you would, that if you were actually wanted to know answers, you would be asking questions. And those
Are you confident that, I know there's been some frustration about getting all the documents relevant to those 3 murders, those 3 assassinations. Are you confident that all of it will come out by the end of this term?
I'm confident that President Trump will release anything that he has access to. But, I don't expect anything groundbreaking to come from those documents because, first of all, with my uncle, we've already got everything. There may be little things like, the calendar for Bill Harvey, who is one of the people who was in the CIA, who is almost certainly involved, and other things like that. There would be, and then more evidence. I mean, the evidence that came out, the last tranche. The New York Times had to finally admit that Lee Harvey Oswald was a CIA asset, which they'd been denying for 50 years. And they finally admitted, he was working for the CIA. And so, there may be some more validation of what, he was doing and how he was recruited, et cetera. But I don't think it's going to be anything groundbreaking. I don't think you need anything groundbreaking. I think, listen, I was a prosecutor. If I had to try the case right now, against a number of the people are dead, I believe I can win in front of a jury with the evidence that we got.
Yep.
With my dad, it was never investigated, and that was deliberate.